So I get started today. We had a lecture last week in one of our courses, and the presenter showed some work by an artist, uh, Agnes Martin, who has these really exquisite drawings of grids and exploration of connection to the bit of tyranny and rigor of a grid system and the freedom it can create, or the elasticity. And I thought it might be a fun place to bring some attention to and play with in our drawings this week. So for the warm-up, let's have some scrap paper here. I'm going to begin to construct a grid of any form or proportion, just to warm up my hands. Maybe in this case, trying to have my attention be to a bit of that structure, that regulated horizontal and vertical that we're so used to seeing paper. It's cutting that behind my drawing. We're in our streets in many of our cities, at least in the United States. And we're kind of always inhabiting a lot of that space of regulation that we use to map out the territories. And as I try to bring some attention to how I'm regulating this page, my horizontals, really horizontal, it's probably unlikely without tools. And I switch to my verticals. How vertical can I make them? How perpendicular do my eyes track? Am I meeting at 90 degrees? And how does that make me feel? I like things to line up. So at first, especially with just a few marks, it often makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. Something I want to correct, but in the drawing, I just breathe and let each mark, each line be its own. Not worry if it's parallel to its neighbors, perfectly perpendicular, as it regulates out some horizontal and vertical rhythm on this piece of paper that we can identify as a grid, even if not one for measuring. We're doing engineering work, or spreadsheets. Maybe as I move back and forth across it, come in and introduce a secondary layer to disrupt it a little bit. I can begin to choose new rhythms of division that don't have to follow the same regulation. Some areas can get smaller, more dense, can even undermine the initial structure by unevenly crossing my lines. I'm going to switch and see if I can do a little bit with my left hand. For me, I think in the longer form exercise today, I want to try to use that challenge as a place to escape a little bit from this regulation, knowing that no line I make with my offhand will likely be perfectly straight or even where I intend it to go. But spending a little time here to get over the initial discomfort and just making marks on a blank piece of paper, so we can begin to explore our interface with this idea of rhythm, repetition, sequence, and division. through something as simple as a grid. The hands feel a bit warmed up. Move to a larger sheet of paper. Switch to a little more fluid instrument. Just have a marker pen here, or a thicker pencil, but anything is fine. And in this one, for myself, I want to play a little bit with what I was feeling in that first part of drawing into a grid, and let it still just divide the page, repartition it into regions, but also be a little bit more fluid, and just challenge myself to work starting anywhere, somewhere. Oh yes, and work with my left hand and just flow my way across the page in a roughly horizontal manner. Make a few of those as initial marks to divide the page. To get more comfortable, maybe they can have a little bit more play and deviation to them. So that my arm do a bit of the walking on the page. Right now, still trying to work within the space between lines. We'll see how my left hand cooperates there. And as I have a bit of that horizontal space developing, I can move now to the vertical. For myself, bringing this attention to how it feels to let my offhand, which is in a little bit of a awkward position here as well, maybe just because I'm not used to having to manage it with the page and avoid smearing my paper. I'm starting to feel it want to just move a little bit. Now, maybe I can challenge a little more whether or not these lines have to divide evenly, if they can cross in the horizontal and vertical. Don't have to be so constrained. And if you're familiar at all with Agnes Martin, this probably drifts pretty far from her experiments there. She was really pushing the regularity to become a space of freedom, that discipline of constructing horizontal and vertical, offering insight into how new territories can emerge. Wherever you're at with that, if you want it to be a little freer, like a weave, more rigorous and structured like a lattice. Just trying to fill up a bit of density on this page. See what your arm flow. I'm finding here that my arm is feeling more comfortable, just working its way across the page. Not even really seeing the lines that come before anymore. Interesting observation. As I just choose a place to begin and let the position of my hand guide the flow. Knowing that my eyes are probably trying to track other patterns, letting them do it on their own. And as we start to have a pretty good density, net forming here, maybe now it gives us a space to come in and explore those regions and subdivisions and how we might draw into them. I find for me, I do a lot of softening of edges to get into those dense intersections, finding a shape within some of the intersections there, calling it out, letting it work into its neighbor. Noticing, because of my grid not being purely horizontal and vertical or orthographic, I get shapes with differing amounts of sides, or with the curvature, different edges. Smooth some of these around. Let my hand draw into the space. Found my left arm was getting a little tired, so giving it just a rest in this new mode. That's okay. There's nothing important or special about which hand we use. Just offers us a different point of attention as it's feeling a little bit looser again. Trying to have the same precision. My offhand I find to be a very interesting challenge for my brain to connect. I have to go maybe a little bit slower. Maybe that gives me an opportunity to take a few breaths with my hand moving to see if within this shape I can make that connection to my body on different levels. And just recognize when I breathe in, when I feel tighter on these longer stretches with an uncomfortable hand. And can I just relax into that and let it flow? The corners I feel more confident and connected. Longer lines. I just breathe and let it go. I'm starting to think what has emerged on the page. Looking into it, I'm seeing a strong directionality along this border where I just happen to have collected several internal cells here. Maybe I'll now bring that to my focus and continue it a bit. This is a big shape, requires a lot of attention from me. A lot of opportunity for deviation or separation from what my eyes set out to follow. These small shapes, maybe I can get a little faster. Just let that hand guide again. Like the grid, these really small shapes just being absorbed. Tracking it in one direction. If I make a mistake by drawing where I didn't intend, picking it up, taking it into the next space, something that the construction of the grid provides is several distinct and related regions that we can play out the same game within, just slightly different each time, each one being a chance for iteration and reconstruction, or even change. Let's see if I can continue this out to reach towards the edges of the page. to further soften my already bending grid in this area. And to occasionally bring some attention back if you're working with an offhand or a new medium or tool, something you're unfamiliar with, or just in a position that is not the position of productivity, of relaxation, of flow, or even discomfort. I begin to notice that my conscious discomfort with my left hand is fading away as I use it a bit more. My eyes adapt to the irregularities. My brain, hand, and eyes connect a little bit more cleanly and just accept their differences and irregularities. That makes me feel a little bit more comfortable to maybe go outside the lines. Maybe get a little faster in my movements. So I use that to challenge my space of comfort. Hopefully open up more room for a little relaxing into the challenge. My wife and I do a yoga practice from a company called Black Swan Yoga. Shirts from there. I think they're in Texas. One of the instructors we often tune into, named JJ, likes to spend a lot of time in certain positions of discomfort, and it's always reassuring that as long as it doesn't hurt, right? As long as it's not damaging us, spending a little time with that discomfort or challenges with intention and practice helps us be ready when we have to face the unintended or unexpected challenges later on. And that's a big opportunity in this mindfulness practice, whether it's drawing, meditation, yoga, or journalism, journaling, maybe journalism, is that we fortify our awareness of discomfort and have a chance to deal with it in a safer space, a lower impact space. Nothing happens if this drawing doesn't work out for me. But I have many, many opportunities to make a mark, feel the difficulty, and maybe a little satisfaction when that mark resolves itself. Be prepared for the next mark, the next challenge. When your arm starts to get tired, or your fingers are cramping, if you're holding a pen in a way you're not used to and it's starting to wobble more, you're just reaching the edge of a space, and edges are hard to cleanly maintain. Remember to take a step back and breathe. The pencil doesn't always have to be moving. You can go join back with where it started by gently tracking over these initial curves to give more attention to that flow that might be disrupted by the wiggles. And I think from this area that has started to develop these cells, you'll work a little stronger separation into the grid, allow some of the cells next to it to become absorbed, heavier, give a little more weight to all this area that I've been putting so much attention into. I find it really interesting in these sessions it's not until much later, towards the end of a bit of drawing, that I really look at what I've started to do. And I often spend maybe another 20 minutes afterwards continuing to draw through the drawing, just because I then have a chance to see something of interest in it to me. And I find that a bit liberating, that while working with it, I have no kind of concern or attention to what it's making, just this tracking of the process. A chance to breathe through the marks. And I like this little curve here that has changed directions. Let's see if we can track along it. Maybe it sets up a new space for exploration. As I speak to not paying attention to the content, brings my mind to that attention. It makes me see opportunities to keep drawing, to kind of develop it into some image or composition. And I sit with that a little bit, try to let it go. You know, it's okay, I can come to that, to resist the temptation or urge to switch to my right hand, where I know I could quickly convey what I'm thinking and seeing because it's used to it. But also recognize that that might jump in too fast, take away some of this space that my offhand brings, just to draw into the drawing, draw into the page, more than draw out from the page. But I can feel and begin to see those muscles that aren't used to this behavior and operation starting to get a little more wobbly. Maybe I can embrace that and savor it as an opportunity to introduce another layer, texture to what's emerging on the page. The strong lines of the grid can start to move with more ease as I have more challenge tracking them. We get to work over previous lines as the repetition increases that deviation. If it's something you find interesting, maybe even extending your grip a little bit on the medium, make it more like a paintbrush, try to track new connections within that space of the grid. We just give our shoulders a little roll, hands a little flex. Take a moment to see where we're at, and if there's anything you'd like to go into a little further or complete in the last few minutes we have. just keep flowing within the space established by the page. And this connection to a visual medium can provide a space between seeing and unseeing, and an attention to what flows from our hand to the page, while visual and present can be absorbing as much as counting breaths to where it disappears, and it's just the motion. And with time, with patience and practice, something happens on the page, something emerges, and hopefully it's something that is inspiring or interesting for you, but also something that you have no discomfort in potentially discarding. Part of the exercise, with the lines in sand, letting it be for a moment and then recycled with the rest of the trees. Hope everyone's having a nice start to their Wednesday. A little cloudy here. Some good soft light. Let my camera come back. Thank you for joining. Spread the word. Good to see you. Let's give ourselves a little bit more time to play. My left hand is getting a bit tired though. I think I'm going to now see what's been created in this canvas and use it as a place to start to generate something new as a drawing. Just for a little bit of time to use that space of attention to bring some creative outlet. Try not to worry so much about the edges. Instead, softening new connections. Painting this heavy marker. Really letting myself feel the way that ink flows onto the page. It creates these rivers. Curve and texture. And I follow lines that speak out to me visually, fill regions that coalesce or condense, and let others fade away. I like these moments where two lines kind of merge for a minute. And then continue on their own trajectory. It's like many of our encounters in life, we spend such a brief time sharing them with another person, or place, or thing. And then we move along. It sticks with us at a moment. It just becomes another blip, deviation, in that longer experience of life. And remembering we can savor or sink into those moments. Sometimes that can be rewarding, sometimes that can be really challenging, as we tend to remember moments of trauma or fear. Again, something like a drawing with its longer attention, its engaging focus for brain, hand, shoulder, arm, back, eyes, neck, breath. Be a space to let some of that held in trauma or connection to events just process and flow like the ink, like the smooth graphite. Be a space of our resilience. It where we began, that challenging offhand, like to slow it down, not try to complete the drawing, but complete the act. To soften a little the intention. Just work with attention. Thank you very much for joining.